Welcome to Tyler's Bike Hacks. I'm your host, Tyler, and today we're going to be changing a front tire inner tube. The only tools you'll need for this process is either a couple tire levers, but more commonly, in case people don't have these at home, a couple flathead screwdrivers should suffice. Additionally, you need a new inner tube for the front tire, as well as a pump to reinflate the tire once the process is complete. The first thing I'm going to do is detach the front wheel. So I'm going to do that with the bike right side up, but you can flip it on its handlebars and its seat if you would like, just to avoid it tipping over once we get the front wheel off. First, we're simply going to pry open this lever. It may take a little bit of force, and you can also use one of your tire levers or preferably a screwdriver just to give you some more leverage. And then we're just undoing this counterclockwise and holding onto the nut on the opposite side, just enough to allow this wheel to come out. Now, before you actually take the wheel out, take into consideration, especially on a rim brake bike, we have to undo that as well. For this, all we're going to do is press the rim brakes together against the tire as though you were braking, and then you can see as I pull on this wire, if I pull hard enough, I will be able to back the caliper out of this little rubber piece, and then I can free it from that metal cage, and that detaches the cables completely. Next, assuming we've undone the brake caliper as well as the axle down below, we can simply lift the bike frame up and the wheel should come right out. Next, we need to break the tire seal. In other words, we need to ensure that all air is out of the inner tube. To unseat or undo the bead of the tire, go ahead and press your fingers into the sidewall to separate the tire from the rim, and you'll feel this. It may give you a little bit of resistance, but all you need to do is just press lightly, and you should be able to pop it out. Once the tire seal is broken, we can either grab our tire levers or, as I alluded to earlier, a few screwdrivers. Flathead screwdrivers should suffice. Starting from exactly the opposite side of the valve, we're going to start taking the tire off. And I'm going to show an example one with my tire levers for those of you who have those, and then one example for those of you who just have the typical home tools such as those screwdrivers. As you can imagine, tire levers in this situation are superior as they are made for this specifically. They do a very nice job of just slipping right underneath the tire itself and then hooking onto a spoke, which helps us sort of start making our way around the tire. All the way around, and we only need to unbead and take off one side, because now that we've done this and we have the one side of the tire, if you can take notice, on the outside of the rim, we can actually dig inside here and get our inner tube out. From here, we're just going to, with the old inner tube, take it out. Okay. Simple as that. And then, of course, I'm using my same inner tube because mine is not broken, but imagine this is straight out of the box that you just got at the store for your replacement inner tube. This actually works better if you have a little bit of air in it, just so it sort of starts to take form without being too rigid, so you still have that flexibility when actually putting it in the tire. The most common method I use is just to blow it up like a balloon with my mouth, because I figure, you know, I can't overinflate it just with my lungs, and that way it's just sort of a good proxy measure. Just wash your mouth afterwards. Now that I have my artificially lung inflated inner tube, I am going to start placing it back in the rim with the valve first, because if I start on the other side, we risk misplacing the valve, because of course there's only one opening for the valve to actually go through, but we also could run the risk of just damaging that valve stem. And from here, continuing on, just reversing the process that we did last time, we're working from the stem all the way to the opposite side, and sort of tucking this back into the tire and trying to get it back in the rim. And if you're finding that the inner tube is fighting you as you're doing this, feel free to let out a little air. Now that we've made it all the way around the tire and have successfully placed the inner tube between the tire and the rim, we're we're going to take our tire levers again and basically reverse the process to rebead our tire. And you'll notice when we unbedded the tire to take the inner tube out, we started on the opposite side of the valve, but we're actually going to start on the same side as the valve this time, because over here, when there's no tension from the rest of the tire, this is the easiest part to get the tire reset back against the rim. And you shouldn't actually need any tools until you get to approximately, I would say, 80% of the way around. That's when it gets a little hairy, because the tire tends to not want to go all the way in without a little persuasion. Now this tire is actually pretty lax. I can get this bedded, I can get this all the way back in the rim without any tools. I can just use my strength to get this back in, but not all tires are going to behave that way. So if you need to, let me pull this out and show you how I would get it back to where it needs to be. So let's say we get to here. So you have all the rest of the tire rebed in the rim with the new inner tube, but this little part right here, there's too much tension on it and you cannot for the life of you get this on with your own force. So tire levers, again, we're going to reverse the angle so we're not coming in like this with the lip facing out, but we're actually going to put the lip facing down in, so it's going to lip on the inside, it's going to catch on the inside of the rim and allow you to press the tire back in with a little bit more leverage. To briefly go over the screwdriver method, all we're going to do, similarly to the tire lever without the convenience of being able to link it on an actual spoke here, we're going to use this to pry the tire out, and our second one, which we can use to sort of guide the tire out. Perfect. And there we go. Tire is back out of its seal, and you can run your fingers all the way around and get the inner tube out that way. Now that the inner tube is back in, you can re-pump up the tire, and you will hear some pops. All that is, you don't need to hit the panic button. That's normal. That's just the outer tube or the tire itself rebedding itself back within the rim wall. To get the tire back onto the bike, I think this is the appropriate angle to show you, is with the bike upside down, so that way I don't have to worry about holding onto the bike while I'm trying to set the tire. And if you didn't take inventory of which way the tire went, this way or that way, when you took the tire off, no big deal. Either look at the tread and match it with the back when you put it on. Otherwise, somewhere along the rim and the tire wall, it will tell you the direction that the tire should roll. With the quick release mechanism still loosened, we're just going to set the tire back onto the front fork. Now we can tighten, either twisting the nut counterclockwise or the lever over here. And we're going to line it up so that you start getting a considerable amount of tension 90 degrees from the fork here. Because once you start getting that tension, it's not closed yet, obviously. We want to press all the way until it's completely parallel with that front fork arm. Now, with the bike flipped back over and oriented correctly, we are going to reinstall the brake mechanism. Same process, if you remember, let's expose this caliper from the rubber stopper here. All we're going to do is press the two brake pads into the rim so there's contact, and then just using a little bit of force, we're going to pull both towards each other and lock that little caliper in that metal cage. And that's all there is to it. Very important final step is just to ensure that you inflate your tire to your desired pressure. And one last thing, these rim brakes tend to be a little bit needy. In other words, they need to be adjusted frequently, especially when taking off and reinstalling the front tire. The way you'll know if these need to be adjusted is if there's brake rub. In other words, if that brake is rubbing against the rim on either side without actually pulling the brake lever. Let's give it a listen and see if we can hear any brake rubbing. Okay, so pretty obvious there. Obviously, the wheel is not even spinning freely because this is pushing so hard. To fix this issue, all we need to worry about are these two screws. This is going to either create more or less movement on each of the brake pads. When tightening and loosening these screws, it may seem counterintuitive, but on the side that's rubbing, what we want to do is actually tighten that screw. Keep track of how much tightening you're doing. I like to go in quarter turn intervals and just count in my head to keep track. Start with 3 to 4 quarter turns and then pull the brake lever. You can already see that that's moving to and from the rim without having done anything over here. Now that we have movement on either side of the wheel on both brake pads, let's give it a listen again. Perfect. That was a pretty easy fix, although that's not always the case. Sometimes, in addition to tightening the side that's rubbing, you also may need to loosen the screw on the side that's out too far. This will give you more flexibility to allow you to tighten this side more and get more of an even distribution of pressure when pushing and then pulling away from the tire. If you've stuck around this long, I appreciate it. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you have any other questions as for how to do mechanical things with your bike, let me know. I'm happy to help you out in any way I can. Until next time, get outside and ride your bike. Peace.